Hello everybody, welcome back to another No More Future, and hopefully subscribe, like, comment, share to friends and loved ones, or watch my other videos or something else. Yeah, let's get back to the game. Yes, my thoughts exactly. I just read that, I think, by the end of the video. Mary doesn't seem to be particularly happy about how things resolve either, though she chooses to display her worries in a far less destructive manner. You quietly approach your Siamese friend, hoping to put a little more distance between you and the fuming dragon behind you. Everything alright? Short answer? Not really, no. Perhaps there was some merit in worrying about this meeting after all. I hadn't even considered that they could call me out like that out of nowhere. I suppose things could have gone far worse than they did, but... Far worse? Jasper turns to face the two of you once again, an anger-filled look in his eyes. They ignored all my points, found no issues with your behavior whatsoever, kindly told me to shove it, and even hooked me up with your toaster boy here just to rub it in. What in the ever-loving frick even happened there? Jasper truly does live up to the ancient dragons of myth and fable in this moment, and you can't say you blame him given how terribly his arguments performed in that meeting room. All along you thought he had the upper hand of the two of you. And yet, in the end, he didn't quite manage to fulfill either of the goals he set out for himself. You thought you'd be relieved at such an outcome, but instead all you can feel is fear and confusion. At least Mary's still the same as ever. Oh please, Jasper, don't be so dramatic. It's not like they took away your job or anything of the sort. They just put you back in your place is all. Besides, when I said it could have gone a lot worse, I was talking about us two. You can see the Drake fighting the urge to respond to the Siamese words with violence once again, his fist tightening up in direct response to his rage. But as always, he somehow relents at the last possible moment, opting instead to head back to his corner of the elevator to calm down and ponder. Yeah, go to your corner, dragon. When Mary turns to speak to you once again, her voice is barely a whisper. Jeez, what a big baby. Alright, enough taunting. That guy's pissed enough as it is, and I'd rather not have to take one of those punches for you if I can avoid it. Oh please! Your armor's more than sturdy enough to resist 100 of those, and then some. If anything, it'd be kind of fun to see him wince after breaking a bone or two on... I said enough! Okay? The feline finally picks up on the anger and worry in your voice, which stems from far more than her brash attitude towards her superior alone. I don't feel like laughing right now, not after everything that happened. We came this close to losing everything, for crying out loud. I don't know how we managed to win over Jasper, if we can even call it that, but I definitely don't feel like celebrating now. Mary hesitates to reply to her comments, evidently just as shaken by the recent events as you are. Yeah. Things didn't quite go as planned, did they? I knew they were gonna lose their patience with me someday, but I didn't expect they'd... Hold on. You're telling me there was a deadline to this project? Why did you never say so before? I didn't tell you about the deadline because there never were any. Well, any formal ones anyway. Synthetics and by extension the technology that lets people transition into them were always intended to be sold to people at some point. This is a financial venture after all. Like Morgan Sr. said, there are already countless facilities around the world equipped to handle a steady stream of customers every day. Some can even handle hundreds of thousands of people per day. Hundreds of thousands? You're already at that stage? Hey, don't be surprised. The technology is ready, as you're quite clearly well aware. Now all that's left is proving that it works. Which I honestly thought we'd have more time to do. Well, isn't that typical? You always think things will wind up in your favor in the end, don't you? Jasper turns to face the two of you once again, arms folded and a grim look on his face. His hearing must be far better, or the two of you far louder than either of you thought. You develop a technology that claims to do the impossible, hoping you'll be able to provide its fruitfulness after the deed. You hide illegal weapons in your synthetic's body for testing purposes, hoping no one will catch on to what you're doing. You're so caught up in your so-called genius, you fail to realize that the rest of the world isn't anywhere near as dumb as you think it is. And when your half-baked plans start falling apart at the seams, you suddenly fall from the clouds like a brain-stunted angel. The frown on Mary's face leaves no doubt in your mind as to how she truly feels within. Deep down, she probably knows that Jasper has a point, but she refrains from replying nonetheless. So what now? Have you finally realized the idiocy of your plans? Now that you only have a month to prove your nonsensical theory is true? Or are you going to claim responsibility for once in your life and admit that it's impossible to the owners before this charade, or charade, depends on where you live, can devolve any further? The Siamese is left thoroughly speechless before the Drake's relentless inquiry, and the same can be said about yourself as well. Even you have to admit that perhaps Mary went a little too far, too soon, having so many facilities all over the world ready to operate without even knowing if your technology works the way it's supposed to feels a little premature. And now that she has so little time to figure that out, is there even a way things could end well at all? Especially for you? What's even going to happen to you if Mary fails in her endeavor? Are we actually recording? Yes, we are. That like crossed in my mind and was like, uh-oh. What's going to happen if the synthetic project is deemed a failure by the very people in charge of it? You have no answer to these questions, and anxiety threatens to eat you up from the inside now more than ever. You hear Jasper prepare himself for a second round of insults against his colleague, entirely oblivious to your rapidly faltering mental state. However, just before he can say another word, no, this changes nothing. We're still right on track as we always were. All this did was speed the train up a bit. The feline's tone of voice is serious, calm, even like The feline's tone of voice is serious, calm, even like water streaming down a brook. Somehow you manage to reply before Jasper can. You're serious? Of course I am. I'm always serious when it comes to this stuff. That meeting was a mess, I agree, but we didn't come this far just to call it quits. 1 month may be a short amount of time, but I'm confident we can get everything ready before the deadline. Judging from the way she speaks, this isn't mere bravado coming from her, nor is this a vain attempt at riding Jasper up. She has complete and utter confidence in her voice, far more than someone who's just been given a month to fulfill a titanic task like this should possess. It's rather impressive, and more than a little concerning. And you're certain you'll be able to answer whether I'm human or not in a mere month of work? In different circumstances, the thought of only needing to wait 1 month to finally get this conundrum sorted out would have elicited a far different response from you. But now that Mary has nothing more but a month to do so, your feelings aren't quite as hopeful as you might have expected. At least she seems to be taking it in stride. We'll figure something out, we always do. Clearly not always. Jasper interjects in the conversation once again, looking just as annoyed and disappointed as before. Are you really going to fumble about for another month before you call it quits? You truly are delusional. And you're nothing if not persistent, I'll give you that. But you're barking at the wrong tree here. I'm aware of your feelings on my project and on the nature of my synthetics. Frankly, I don't think there's a single person in the whole building who doesn't after today. But if you're looking forward to me admitting defeat and giving up on my duty, well, you'd best be prepared to be sorely disappointed. The Drake gives his colleague a long, menacing stare as if sizing her up. Whatever thoughts are swarming his head at present, you cannot say. In the end, he doesn't even grace her with a sigh as he turns to face the other way, looking thoroughly drained by this exchange. Very well. Have it your way, Doctor. See where your misguided confidence leads you. You can see Mary makes it as if to reply anyway, but evidently unhappy with letting her superior have the last word, but before she can do just that, the elevator doors open once again with a jingle and the familiar sight of Pandora's lobby shows itself beyond their confines. About time, I was starting to think I'd be trapped in here with you all day. I guess he is gonna be trapped here with Isaac all day. The Drake elegantly steps out of the elevator and into the lobby while you remain inside with your Siamese friend. You're not sure why he chose to come all the way here, honestly? You thought he'd stop on his office's floor, wherever it may be, or perhaps someplace else that he needed to visit. The reason why reveals itself as he turns around and gives you an inquisitive, impatient look, which almost makes you jump from the sheer surprise. Well, what are you waiting for? Do you plan on staying in that elevator for the rest of eternity or something? I'm sorry? You heard me. I already have a reservation for lunch at the new bistro downtown, and asking them to make space for a +1 will already be embarrassing enough. The least you could do is not have us arrive late as well. You need a moment or two to understand just what in the world that Drake's asking of you before you manage to make. I can't help but smile. This grumpy SOB here hates synthetics, but is ordered by the big boss, up top, his grandfather and boss. Spend some time with the synthetic. Wow, literally spat, metaphorically, spat on his face in front of all these people. Damn. Before you manage to make a connection with something, Mr. Morgan said right before dismissing you. Is Jasper really inviting you out for lunch? Well, inviting may be a tad too generous a term given the way he phrased it. Nonetheless, you certainly didn't expect him to force you to go along with the request so quickly after they made it. Oh, hold on just a moment. I never agreed to this. I already had plans to go out with Mary and Natalie at... I couldn't care less about your prior arrangements. The owners asked me to help evaluate you or whatever, and that's what I plan on doing. Over lunch, of all things? Indeed. I certainly don't plan on skipping it for your sake, if that's what you were hoping. No, I'm just asking why we have to do it now, of all times. The Drake sighs as he crosses his arms, looking rather annoyed with your apparent ignorance. He stares at you as though you were a calculator that couldn't put 2 and 2 together. The sooner I get this nonsense the owners have asked of me out of the way, the sooner I can return to doing productive things for the sake of my company. I won't be able to concentrate on my work if this idiotic request of theirs is allowed to remain unfulfilled. I'd rather take care of this right away before the thought of spending time with you begins to haunt me my very waking moment. Well, that's a rather roundabout way of saying he wants to get it out of the way immediately, a rather rude one as well. And what about that thing hiding in my tail? Don't you want Mary to remove it before we go? Oh, please, I'm sure you can go 20 feet without electrifying someone to death, can't you? All of a sudden, he doesn't seem anywhere near as bothered by that illegal weapon he was so vehemently against earlier. His outrage replaced by nothing more than sheer annoyance at this circumstance. If nothing else, Jasper sounds quite adamant about having this little get-together as soon as possible. And you doubt there's anything you can say to dissuade him. You turn to face the Siamese, a pleading look in your eyes. You lower your tone of voice so as to try and keep the Drake out of a conversation. Is there any way I could avoid this? Judging from how the awkward-looking feline is tiptoeing around the subject while hanging in the elevator, you probably can't. As much as I'd like to whisk you away, the last thing we want right now is to give Jasper more ammunition against us. It'd look bad if I prevented him from fulfilling his grandfather's request in the name of a casual lunch between friends. Besides, the sooner you can get it out of the way, the sooner you two can go back to doing, well, literally anything else, really. I was afraid you'd say that. Yup. Can't say I envy you in the slightest. I wouldn't wish this fate on my worst enemies. Then again, it'd be kind of hard to have Jasper go on a date with himself. You give Mary the side eye as he cackles at her own joke, which her superior luckily didn't seem to hear. Finally, after whispering along all this time, her tone of voice returns to normal as she prepares to send you off. Okay, but for real, don't worry about me and Nats, alright? We can go out for dinner another time. You just grit your teeth and try bear with it for an hour or so, okay? I'm sure you can survive a few hours with that grumpy old man. You can physically hear Jasper's eyes roll to the ceiling as he hears the Siamese words and encouragement. He's merely joining me for a meal, Dr. Shelley. It's really not the Calvary either of you believes it to be. He's probably right. As much as you can't stand the guy, in the end he's just inviting you out for lunch. You'll probably be fine, things considered. Hanging out with an unpleasant person won't kill you if the countless evenings you've spent with George's parents are anything to go by. Well, alright then. I guess I can't say no to an invitation from the CEO of Pandora anyway. I'm glad you could reach that conclusion in a somewhat acceptable time frame. Now get moving. We've already lost enough time as it is, so this better be worth it. The dragon turns tail and begins heading out the exit, followed closely by the eyes of all employees and visitors alike in the lobby. After one final goodbye to your Siamese friend, you hastily follow him along, wondering if an afternoon out with Jasper might just be enough to refresh you from the horrors you had to endure that meeting group earlier. Probably not. You reckon? Probably not. You exit the buildings amidst the curious gazes and hushed murmurs of all the people in the lobby, which quickly die down as the door is closed behind you. As you leave, you're immediately greeted by the blinding light of the sun and the whistling of the gentle wind. The quiet outside is pleasant and relaxing, a far cry from the stressful and even frightening silence that enveloped the elevator in the meeting room earlier. You have a mind to spend all day out here, slowly restoring your sanity while lulled by your awe-inspiring surroundings, perhaps laying on a bench amidst one of the many green aisles surrounding Pandora HQ. But it doesn't take long for you to remember what brought you out here in the first place. Jasper awaits you before a long, deep green limousine, an annoyed look in his eyes as he stares you down from afar. The hovering car he's half stepping inside of looks like a mixture between a sports model and a period one. You've never been inside a car like this before, though you can tell that it's easily worth a few limbs of your android body and then some. If you needed any more reasons to be wary of your little outing with Pandora's CEO, this could very well be on top of the list. Yet you're afraid that no number of excuses could save you from what's to come. Might as well accept everything with a smile at this point. Took your sweet time getting here. Sorry about that. I guess it's easy to lose track of time when you have so much of it at your disposal. How convenient. The dragon steps into the vehicle with surprising speed and finesse despite his rather large frame and scoots towards the seat furthest away from the entrance. Get inside already. We don't have all day. In fact, the less time we have, the better. You don't even have time to sigh as you begrudgingly step into the limousine, already not looking forward to the afternoon that awaits you. All you can think about is how much Mary is going to owe you once all is said and done. Outside the windows, you can see the city sprawling before your eyes in all its magnificent glory. Traveling through the streets on a hovercar is quite the experience compared to a regular one. Without the wheels underneath bumping you up and down as you go, it almost feels like riding a much slower mag train. Nonetheless, it's quite pleasant to view new relay like this. Comforting, even. Definitely more than your other alternative. The Drake has been staring at you ever since you first stepped into the car, though he's yet to speak a word to you. You're not sure whether he's lost in thought or simply wants to seem as though he is. Instinctively, you try to engage him in conversation, with nothing more to pass the time. I've never been on a vehicle like this before. Well, aside from a mag train anyway. How does it even fly like this? Aren't you capable of simply looking it up on your own? Well, so much for pleasantries. I could, but I think it's more fun to learn stuff from other people than it is from the internet. The dragon raises a suspicious eyebrow at your statement, but ultimately decides to respond as he calmly stares outside the window. If you must really know, there are hundreds of thousands of magnetic rocks hidden just beneath the surface of the road. Though small, they emit a potent electromagnetic charge, the same polarity as the bottom of this hover car. And the car stays afloat thanks to the two magnetic fields bouncing off of each other? Precisely. This is also why this vehicle cannot fly, as you claimed earlier, but merely float a small distance away from the road. When I think about it, I think hovercrafts, not to the extent that it flies, because then it would create a different kind of traffic. What was I gonna say? It helps for speed bumps, I guess, for anything really. Let's say, roads will still be needed as more of a guide, so to say. You don't want to be driving through a swamp, so you'd be going left and right. Quite a hazardous environment, correct? But if it's hovering and it's on the road, potholes, poorly made speed bumps, humps, I guess. What else is there? I guess that's it, pretty much. Or maybe the road is a little bit messed up. I wouldn't call them a pothole or road hole, but more like a bit of a mess in which it could scratch the paint of your bumper, front bumper, because it's a little bit lower. Not too lowered, but lower enough that it can get scratched. Yeah, it is what it is, but I think hover cars might work. Other than that, let's get back to the game. Those mini magnets are powerful, but not that powerful. I see. So that's how it hovers above the ground. You really know a lot about this. You asked and I provided. There's no reason to act as so shocked. Or are you surprised that I actually rose to your provocation? Provocation? I was just asking a question, and I am surprised. From what I've gathered earlier at the meeting, you're more into business, finance, and all that kind of stuff, and yet you sounded almost like a scientist just now. Almost like Mary, rather. But considering how prone to anger the Drake seems at present, you prefer not to make any unfortunate comparisons when you can avoid it. It comes with spending enough time surrounded by such people. For better and for worse, you're bound to pick up some things over time. That's true of any environment, not merely my own. After that, the dragon returns to his quiet brooding on the other side of the car, either unsure how or unwilling to continue the conversation. Huh, seems nice. A little disappointed with your shorter than expected conversation, you decide to take a brief look outside the window, trying to distract yourself. You barely moved 2 neighborhoods since this conversation began, and your destination, whatever it is, doesn't seem anywhere near. The fault, of course, lies with the packed streets all around you, full to the brim with bustling people looking forward to a warm meal and maybe some weekend fun. Traffic truly is a great equalizer. Everybody's stuck and is equally frustrated. Oh no, my man. Traffic, yeah. Government vehicles? No. They get escorted with cops and all. And you have to just either, if it's traffic, you're not gonna overtake them. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy. You're not gonna tail them. Some people do, especially here in the Philippines. If some of you not know, I do live in the Philippines. What else? Ambulance, firefighters, that's a given. It's emergency. Government vehicles though, I don't know if it's emergency or not. But they do whatever. It is what it is. I think they also do that in some countries. It really depends on where you live. Aren't you supposed to be asking questions to me and such right now? That can wait. We haven't reached the restaurant yet, and I'd rather not ruin my meal by starting an argument with you before I even get to enjoy it. Still as grumpy as ever, it seems. If his goal is to sour your mood even further, he's definitely succeeding. But if he's going to be difficult about this whole thing, you might as well join him. Not having a good day, are we? It looks, damn, he's mad, look at that, he switched it up, man. If looks could kill, you'd be nothing more than ashes on your seat right now. You know, if I wasn't certain you didn't have a life, I'd ask if you had a death wish. Instead, you're merely a robot, perfectly aware of the freedoms he enjoys, of the protections he enjoys, rather. But I wouldn't be so confident if I were you, not while we sit but a few feet apart. Sorry. If Jasper is trying to intimidate you, he's quite close to succeeding. But you've seen what he looks like when he's really angry now. And this is nothing but comparison. Or perhaps you're simply so shook from this morning's events that you can't bring yourself to care all that much. What do you think a normal person wouldn't be talking to you this way? I would imagine a normal person would have something called common sense, correct? Damn. What about Mary? Yes, what about that deranged, immoral, opportunistic lunatic? Is that truly your reference for how normal people act? He has a point, as needlessly rude as it is. Touché. So you claim. Alright, this is getting a tad annoying even by your standards. It's getting tougher and tougher to put all his negativity behind you every time he opens his mouth. He's Mr. Grumpy, you know, Grumpy Dragon, the Grumpy Drake. Is this what Mary has to deal with every day? No wonder she views and speaks of her boss so negatively. But you aren't going to endure his rudeness any longer. If you have no choice but to hang out with this man, you might as well confront him about his behavior directly. Can you just give it to me straight already? Why do you even hate me this much? The dragon appears at first a bit stunned by your sudden interjection, then furious at your insolence. He makes as if to threaten you over your bold choice of words, but he ultimately relents, sensing it to be a pointless endeavor. Instead, he goes the opposite way in order to oppose you. Where do we even begin? Should we start with what happened on Thursday? Or would our short meeting yesterday better help to jog your memory? Come on, we both know that's not what really takes you off about me. The dragon sits still upon hearing your rebuttal, surprised by your resolute statement. I could tell from the very moment I met you, and what I heard today only reinforced that theory. You told the owners you were bothered by my actions the past few days by the weapon hidden in my tail, yet here you sit totally unfazed, as though none of this really matters to you. You can come clean admit it already. You began to despise this project long before you heard of what happened with those police officers. No, my friend. Long before I became a synthetic. My only question is, why? Jasper's stare only grows angrier as he steels himself to answer the bones in his fist, almost cracking as he tightens them against one another. Clearly, something deep inside him pisses this whole project. He's like mad about this project. I don't know what it is, man, but he's mad. He's trying to pick every small thing, every small matter, and making it put it in the con bin, disadvantage bin, so he could like throw it to the owners and say, yeah, cancel this project. I'm hella mad. Because you were never turned into a synthetic to begin with. You were created, not born, and the person you claim to be has long since left this world. It might shock you to learn this, but people do indeed die when they are killed. And Isaac, whoever he was most definitely killed by the very scientists you confide in and revere. If you didn't know already that Jasper thinks the transition is a sham, this would be your waking call. There we go. That's it. But the very CEO doesn't even believe in this project. Damn. So that's why they haven't found the evidences for humanity yet. If their very leader here doesn't give two craps about it. But you already had no doubt in your mind about that, and so something else you said catches your attention instead. Revere. What do you even think my relationship with Mary's like? That she's some kind of goddess I mindlessly worship or something? Why, I'd be surprised if that weren't the case, considering how much she shields you from any and all criticism and how eager you accept her aid. That's more than a little extreme, sure. You rely on and trust her quite a bunch, but only because she's one of the few people you have left that genuinely cares about you. Exactly. This guy is deranged, man. This guy's pure hatred mode. There's deep anger inside this dragon of a CRO. Like, why would Mary not defend her creation? What, let people criticize Isaac? Alright, let's see. And she believes Isaac as a person, really. So it's more of like a friendly gesture. And in a way, they're friends. It's not in a way that she defends Isaac in every little thing. Because then, okay, that's weird. You realize she defends him on the big things, which matters. Police? FBI? The owners? Come on, man. Makes sense. Doesn't even seem out of place. Okay, going back to the game. Maybe the Drake thinks you're only this way with her because she made you or whatever. But that couldn't be further from the truth. We're friends. I trust in her because she believes in me and treats me well. If you were anything like her, I'd probably feel a lot better hanging around you too. Is that an attempt at convincing me that you're a real person by chance? It's my way of getting you to stop acting like a child for 5 seconds. You're not sure when you decided to sound so angry with the man sitting only a few feet apart from you? Damn! Isaac just clapped back, man. But the rough choice of words clearly had an impact on the CEO. Now is your time to say something that won't get you killed in retaliation. Like it or not, we're gonna be spending the next hour or so together, and from what I've gathered, the owners expect you to keep an open mind about it. I know you think I'm nothing more than a mindless robot, but you could at least pretend as though I was a real person while we go about this. If nothing else, to avoid any embarrassing scenes once we're out of the car. As angry as Jasper seems at being talked to in such a condescending way, that Drake can see your point as clear as day. Though it visibly pains him to do so, his stiffness finally dissipates upon recognizing the value of her words. Fine. I will pretend as though you're my equal for as long as it's required, if that is what it takes. From what I gather, Jasper here is more of a soul, you're born, flesh, and thing. You're you, the soul. The body dies, the soul goes whatever. So for him, anything that's not that, I guess was not born naturally, well, they're not truly human and they're below us. So in a way, humanity, I think of us as a race, no, as a species. We're inherently racist against other. No, I guess species, not races, because that's like race is like a sub thing for species. You know, we're like, well, I don't know what to call that really. Xenophobe? I don't know what term. Because if I say species, is that even a word? I don't know, something like that. We're all like, if something out there was above us, oh, humanity would be like, no, they're not our equals, fam. Or something like a robot like this. Sorry, Isaac. So for the R word, robot or synthetic or AI is a sentient AI. Sorry for the sidetrack here. It's just a good thought, food for thought. we're inherently, or I guess most fictional stories, is that anything not human is below. Even though, you know what, yeah, we do horrible things to other humans. You know why? We try to make them into, we create a picture in our heads that, okay, the things that we do to this person, they're not equal to me as a human, you know? It's different. I just think that's what some people have. That's why they do bad things to others. Really bad things. Alright, let's get back to the game. Fine. Okay, I read that. But another snarky comment from you and I'll return you to your maker in pieces. A little scarier than last time, you have to admit, but at least you finally secured this cooperation. More than fine with me. I suppose this warrants an apology of my behavior earlier. It was a little childish, all things considered. Not entirely undeservedly, but the dragon doesn't need to hear that. At the very least, you appear capable of learning from your mistakes. If nothing else, you're better than a B grade in this regard. But then again, so was the A grade from what I've heard. The umpteenth reference to Kronos would have made you roll your eyes if you hadn't grown accustomed to it by now. Instead, you decide to try and look past it and use it as a means of continuing the discussion instead. Dear Lord, let's not talk about B grades. You still have nightmares from the one Mary hooked me up with earlier this week. Hooked you up with? Oh, where do I even begin? You take your time explaining what happened with your first assistant to the dragon. As emotive as you'd like to be while recounting the subject matter, you try your best to stay calm and focused so as to not upset the serious-looking man before you. And that lasted about 3 days before I finally had enough. The very reason I returned to New Relay 2 days ago was so I could get Mary to remove him. I will never understand what in the world goes through that woman's head. Yeah, same here. The way I see it, B grades are nothing more than toys for the wealthy and the eccentric. A fun conversation topic to either entertain, and I use that term very loosely here, or bore your guests to death with. I wouldn't survive with one in my head for an hour, much less 3 days, and for that matter, neither would any sane person out there. It is a miracle I resisted that long, indeed. Maybe Mary was trying to figure out whether I was similar to a human in that regard? A rather generous way of interpreting her actions, wouldn't you say? If her mind, if we can call it that, is anything remotely comparable to a human's, she should already have the tools to ascertain that on her own. I don't know if it's really that simple. The Drake quietly scoffs at your uncertainty but does not attempt to continue the conversation further. You're not sure whether he's truly trying to keep faith to his earlier promise or if he simply doesn't have anything else left to say. Not wanting to spend the rest of your trip to the restaurant in silence, you try to go back to an earlier discussion. So, you still haven't explained to me why you want to shut down Mary's project and all. Jasper raised an eyebrow at your seemingly needless query. I believe I provided ample motivations already. You need only think back 5 minutes ago or further back to our meeting if you need more. Yeah, I've gathered a lot from all that already. But you still haven't told me why you refuse to acknowledge the synthetic's humanity or what caused you to develop these views in the first place. You would word it like that, wouldn't you? Now it's your turn not knowing how to reply. Excuse me? Refuse to acknowledge? You're acting as though your humanity is already established as a matter of fact when it's clearly anything but. It's a subtle way of trying to paint me as some sort of monster for refusing to acknowledge what you believe to be a disputable truth. It might work on the ignorant or the easily emotional, but I won't fall for tricks like these. Damn, he really is a CEO. Well, you want to feel offended at Jasper's remark, but the truth is that you can see where he's coming from. Without even realizing it, you forced your beliefs onto him and held him to the same standards as Mary or Natalie. And you more than anyone should know that things are nowhere as simple as that. Is this what you've been doing with your friends too? With Daphne, Apollo, Nem, with George? You hope not, yet the shadows swarming your thoughts whisper otherwise. I'm sorry about that. I didn't think my words through as much as I should have. I'll try to avoid doing that again in the future. As painful as it sounds, you need to genuinely consider Jasper's perspective and try to understand his motivations if you really want him to understand yours. Now that you think about it, since when has this been your goal? Last you checked, your only desire was to flee from this arrangement as soon as you got the chance. Damn, I'm really invested in this story. Either way, you're not entirely opposed to growing a little closer to Jasper if it means getting targeted by him a little less often. It might even help Mary avoid some heat in the future. Hypothetically speaking, and you don't need to explain why that'd be beneficial to you as well. I suppose it's pointless to get angry with you either way, all things considered. In the end, you're nothing but an automaton, and I can't fault you for the way you were engineered. Jasper decides to bring you back to reality with one of his usual charming remarks. Well, that's not very nice either, is it? You said earlier you were going to treat me as your equal for a while, didn't you? What happened to that promise? The Drake remained silent before your inquiry, evidently quite aware of his faults. It takes a while for the verdescent reptile to form an opinion, but in the end he can do nothing but agree with your stance as much as pains him to do so. Fair enough. Regardless, I don't understand why you'd even need to think, given your condition. Robot, android, or whatever, you are still one of the most powerful computers humanity's ever created. I cannot fathom a reason why you'd need to even think things through with so much information practically at your fingertips. It's not easy as that. Sure, I can look stuff up online whenever I want and stuff, but that doesn't mean I know everything. But you could. Now it's your turn to lay speechless in your seat, unsure what to say. Why do you hesitate? Why remain ignorant when you could be anything but? I don't know. I'd say it's probably because I just don't feel like it, but I'm not sure you'd like that answer a whole lot. I guess you just prefer learning about stuff on my own instead of reading everything up online? It feels more personal to me that way. I'll also argue that conversing with others and living in general would be a lot more monotonous if you had no more room to learn or grow. The Drake still shivers upon hearing you speak of thinking, learning, and living, but he keeps faith to his promise and refrains from commenting on your speech otherwise. At least in a way you're used to. With a logic like that, no wonder Dr. Shelley seems to leave you in the dark just as much as she does me. That came out of nowhere? It really didn't. What you said simply got me thinking of our previous conversation in a new light is all. Back when I first met you, I thought you were being oblivious to the way the law worked on synthetics was a ruse, and I had similar feelings during our discussion post-Bradbury in your apartment. The thought of you generally being this dumb never even crossed my mind. I always assumed Mary kept you up to speed with everything she did, which could very well still be the case, and this could all just be an attempt on your behalf to convince me otherwise. Good God, how does Mary even stand this guy? I don't know, man. Now you almost feel bad over trying to tell Mary not to be unreasonable with her superior. This reptile clearly deserves every inch of her distaste. His casual rudeness aside, he does raise an interesting, if slightly painful point. I'm telling the truth, whether you believe me or not is another matter entirely. Mary explained her reasoning as to not wanting to concern me with things she's supposed to take care of, but yeah, who are we kidding? She does have a habit of keeping people in the dark about stuff, even me. Jasper raises an eyebrow upon seeing you so confused and hesitant, as though he never expected you to ever feel that way towards the Siamese. And yet you said you trust her nonetheless. I can see... Sorry, I burped. I can see why you'd be suspicious of that, yeah. But what's the alternative? Confiding in the owners who made it clear that they see me as nothing more than an AI, and all the people out there who currently think similar things. Confide in you? The CEO responds with nothing but silence. His thoughts entirely indiscernible thanks to that ever-serious look in his eyes. As flawed as Mary is, she gave me hope when I had none. A life when my old one threatened to slip away. Sorry. I had to clear my throat. She's one of the few people I have left that has been consistently kind and attentive towards me, and always cares about my well-being above all else. Can you blame me for wanting to accept her as a friend nonetheless, in spite of all her shortcomings? Once more, the dragon appears unsure of how to reply. However, that look in his eyes is much different from the one he had before. We're not quite sure how, but it is. He seems to be mulling something in his mind, and now you have no clue whatsoever as to what it could be. Whatever this change you've noticed in him might be, at the very least he appears far more open to dialogue than he did before. The owners. What? You've never met them before today, did you? What did you gather about them in the short time we spent together? You're a little taken aback by his question. Truth be told, not only is this entirely out of left field, it's also quite difficult to answer. Your worst fear is that this is some sort of test, and that the wrong reply might spell doom for your immediate future. Am I allowed to be frank? Of course. That's the whole point of why we're here, is it not? Even about your grandfather. The dragon hesitates before your request for clarification, a myriad of emotions passing through his gaze. I would suggest you choose your words a little more carefully when speaking of him, perhaps. But other than that, yes, you're allowed to speak your mind. That's quite surprising. You didn't think you'd ever be given permission to be honest around someone so unapproachable. We still have doubts as to whether he's going to keep his word or not, but you decide to speak on this matter nonetheless, if only for the sake of continuing the conversation. Well, they all just seem kind of out there, for starters. Eccentric would be a good word for it, but in general, they just gave me really weird vibes. The Drake's eyes rolled towards the seating, though not necessarily out of annoyance towards you. Upper class people tend to have that sort of impact, yes. The penguin and the rabbit also came across as very self-centered too, I suppose. They seem really bothered by the fact that you called them for a meeting and disrupted their plans, even though you were just trying to look after their company. Again, Jasper raises an eyebrow at your comments. I'm surprised you can speak so politely for my actions today, given what's the purpose I'd call that meeting for. Yeah, you're not the only one, believe me. I'm still not sure why you want the things you do, but I can't say I really blame you. I haven't exactly been a model synthetic in the past few days. At the end of the day, you're still a businessman looking after his own company. Could be that I'm being a bit too generous right now, but I get where you're coming from if that's the case. The sudden silence in the car communicates to you that the dragon is once again thinking things through in his head, seemingly detached from reality. Or could possibly have someone who speaks his mind so freely all the time so deeply lost in thought. Finally noticing that the conversation hasn't moved on since you last spoke, Jasper decides to briefly interrupt his mullings. You may continue if you wish. Oh, right. But I can't say much else of those two I talked about earlier. The things they said and the manner in which they did came off as maybe a little selfish, like they cared more about themselves than they did Pandora. But overall, they didn't stray too far from what I thought a stereotypical capitalist would look and sound like. Not like you have much experience with that sort of individual, aside from a few video shows and occasional reading material for class. What about my grandfather? And here's where your hair would stand up all at once if your new body had any of it. Jasper's been true to his word so far, but the idea of speaking of his own family before him still has you more than a little on edge. You decide to play it safe, at least for now. Well, it was pretty scary, and that's for sure. I don't think I've been this close to staring death in the face since my last days at the hospital. I'm not sure what to make of him besides that, though. He didn't seem all that interested in the conversation until you mentioned that fight, and even then, all he sought was to erase all evidence of what happened. I still can't figure out why. For that matter, neither can you tell why Jasper asked you about this to begin with. Why did he ask about your opinions on the owners when he was so adverse on hearing your opinions on anything not only 10 minutes earlier? I see. So he says and nothing more. Feeling a little annoyed, you decide to ask about that. Was my answer satisfying? Was it what you were hoping to hear? No, I wasn't hoping to hear anything. That's what he chooses to reply, yet that look in his eyes says something else entirely. You're still unsure what's going on with him, but at least you feel as though you're moving the conversation along somehow. I assume Mary never told you of the way Pandora's shares are divided amongst the owners either, correct? You're once again surprised to hear Jasper try to involve you in the conversation so willingly. It's a little tough to get used to after you spent so long trying to shut you down. I'm also quite surprised, nonetheless, especially when you still have no idea why he's talking about this stuff to begin with. Why would she even tell me something like that? It's not particularly relevant, I agree, but it is rather insightful. That you can agree with. You still know so little about the corporation he works for, even though you owe them practically everything. Mary never spoke about them much, Arthur was unreliable from start to finish, and Natalie, well, the topic just never happened to come up so far. As it stands, you're not going to say no to free information, no matter how insignificant, especially when it comes from the very person in charge of the whole thing. As it currently stands, my grandfather owns 63% of Pandora Incorporated, Mr. Lighting owns 24%, Mr. Algon 13%. I see. But wait, what was the whole point in inviting the latter two then? If your grandfather owns the vast majority of the company, doesn't that mean that he's the only one in charge? It does. Now you're confused. I guess it's more of a power play? I don't know. Well, more confused than usual at least. Luckily, Jasper is quick to step in to provide elucidations. Pandora was founded by what can best be described as a cabal of wealthy business owners and so-called philanthropists. Originally, they were a plethora of small-time shareholders over vast capital that they squabbled over incessantly. One man, however, realized rather quickly that this was an inefficient way to govern a growing empire. Are you talking about your grandfather? That would be the logical assumption, especially considering he's the one running the whole show as per the CEO's words. Still a cabal of wealthy business owners and philanthropists, you're not sure why, but you never expected Jasper to use this sort of language when talking about his own company's founders. You'd think he would revere them as great people or businessmen, mainly because it feels belittling somehow. My grandfather is not that old, thank you very much. But you're correct in deducing that he was a member of my family, though a distant relative he may be. As time went on, this ancestor began buying out his fellow partners one by one. In return for his leadership, he promised to send money to their families as compensation for the rest of time. Enough to secure them a spot as part of the wealthiest elite for the rest of eternity, with none of the effort or knowledge required to actually earn such a spot. For many, it was an easy choice, I agree. I don't need to go to meetings or pick up paperwork or whatever. Easy money. Even if they wound up regretting it much later on when it became clear that their revenue is far outclassed what little they earn as a result of this deal. So they bought everyone out, and they got practically endless wealth as a result. And it was still nothing compared to what Pandora makes. You're not sure whether to feel pity or jealousy for these people. Either way, the ancestors of Mr. Algan and Miss Lightning were different, but they were bumbling idiots same as the rest of them. But they were stubborn, and that ended up being their saving grace. They held on to their stock for dear life, and their descendants still do it for this day. The lucky, miserable buffoons. For all intents and purposes, those cretins are nothing but glorified parasites leeching off of the fortunes we generate like glittering gold-covered pests. And furthermore, they insist on playing a minor role as part of Pandora's establishment, correct? That's crazy. It's actually frightening how easy it is to indulge in the dragon's venomous rhetoric when it's not aimed at you. You can't help but listen to every word he speaks as he dances with language, carrying with him the fury and grace of a true master. You almost feel ashamed of yourself. Almost. That's the infuriating part. There's nothing more annoying than a leech who styles themselves a manager. But nonetheless, they're my bosses and I'm committed to working under them in spite of all this. At least my grandfather's there to ensure they can do this company no harm. Or so I thought. The CEO has shared quite a lot of interesting info with you so far, you have to admit, far more than you thought he'd ever do. It'd be remiss of you not to inquire further now that he's feeling so talkative. So wait, Pandora is a family business. Hearing you ask another question, Jasper ceases his maulings once again and turns to address you once more. It's definitely no mom and pop store, if that's what you're wondering, but for the most part, yes. But I've spoken long enough already and my throat is starting to ache, likely as a result of all that shouting from earlier for sure. We'll continue this discussion in the restaurant, perhaps over a glass of water or two. That's a little disappointing. You barely began talking to each other like somewhat equals, and the Drake already needs a break. It's understandable, of course. You have been going at it for quite a long while, thanks to all the weekend traffic outside slowing you down. Even if most of the things he said earlier were mean-spirited insults aimed straight at your self-esteem. But he's putting in the effort to at least have a decent conversation now, and you have to credit him for that. Now it falls onto you to respect his limitations and try to make the best of your time together in spite of them. Fair enough. If it can make you feel better, learning all these things from you was quite interesting so far. I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation. The dragon returns only a roughly grunt as he turns to stare outside the window, though neither the cars nor the houses surrounding him seem to catch his attention in the slightest. He's still wary of looking relaxed or pleased around you, and you can't fully blame him for that given everything that happened. Jasper clearly has quite a lot of emotional baggage he carries with him at all times. Whether he will share some of it with you in the future or not remains to be seen. Wow, you've never been in this opulent area of the city before, at least to your knowledge. Downtown New really feels like the gaudy dream of every rich kid across the world, populated exclusively by wealthy or at least fashionable people and filled with nothing but shiny and attractive tourist traps. High couture clothing shops, jewelries, high-tech stores, nightclubs. You don't think you've been to a single one of these places before, even across the rest of your life. You're not sure whether they're supposed to be tourist traps or if there are people in this town truly has a constant need for all this junk the stores advertise so aggressively. The dragon is quick to notice your interest in something a little further ahead. Intrigued by the amusement park further in? Alright, I'm gonna end this video right here. I'm tired as well. I'm like Jasper over here. Parched. Tired. 48 minutes in. I'll be seeing everybody next episode of No More Future or some other game. Hopefully you like this video, or comment down below if you want more or something else or whatever. Subscribe to support this channel. See ya. Good luck on whatever you're doing. Good night, everybody.